Hey, you know how you're awesome? Well, why don't you continue being awesome by checking out my podcast, Waffle Box? Because why the fuck not? I don't know what I'm doing with that hammer. Crazy.
Microdose, yeah. Microdose. Microdose. Microdose, dose. Microdose. Microdose, dose. Microdose. Microdose, dose.
5 and then 4, 3. What's good, y'all? Kush Hayes here. Local by choice, international by nature. No Robin Sato tonight. Normally she's with us. She's got the night off. We got a busy slate ahead of us, so you'll see her again. But joining me today, all the way from the United Kingdom, he's the director of a little movie called Officer Down. It's currently in the Iron Dragon TV Action Festival that is still happening up until tomorrow, September 4th. His name is Simon Pearce. Simon, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Dude, thanks for being a part of this. Thank you for getting your schedule and ours linked together. This is exciting.
Sure.
The Iron Dragon Action Fest is happening right now. Like I said, unfortunately, we got one more day in the festival. You have a movie called Officer Down. It is about a cop his team is trying to quell a riot going on in downtown London or somewhere about that. And then he just makes a wrong turn and ends up alone and in a building full of bad guys. It's 18 glorious minutes. Tell us about the movie, please.
Yeah, so the film actually started with myself and Martin Delaney, the lead actor, talking about doing some sort of action vehicle together. You know, he was keen to do something in that genre, and I was keen to do it as well because it's a genre I love and I want to work in it long form. And I was very conscious the last couple of things I'd done had both been horror projects. And so already a couple of times I'd had people say, oh, so you're like a horror guy. And I was like, oh, I'm actually not. You know, I've really enjoyed those films. But yeah, action thriller, that's really what I love. So I wanted to do something to kind of make a stamp in that vein. And Martin was keen to do so as well. So it kind of just started with us thinking about what's a scenario that we could place him in. And then I came up with the idea of this sort of young police officer that was trapped, because I wanted to do something that also playing to Martin's strengths, where he was a bit of an everyman. You know, it wasn't a case of, you know, he's ex-special forces or anything like that. So sort of the young police officer was the idea. And I worked on the script with the Tommy Draper, the co-writer. But for a while, we couldn't really crack the story. I just felt like this is just good guys versus bad guys. It's not as interesting as it could be. And I felt like I needed something else. And then it was the beginning of 2019. I kind of felt like I cracked the final piece of the puzzle, which was the idea that the people he was going after were maybe not who you thought, and that they were people that had perhaps unfairly been set upon by, you know, the authorities or the police, or certainly that there were people within that group that were not all as complicit as one another, and they'd all been kind of tarred with the same brush. And just that idea that things are a bit more in the grays than we might like to think, you know, they're not as black and white as we might think. And that suddenly was more interesting to me, the idea that, yes, there's a policeman in trouble, but at the same time, he's led to question, well, actually, why am I here in the first place? And I'm coming to get these people just because I've been told they're bad, and I've been told to come and get them. And just coming to understand maybe why they're doing what they're doing, and that not all of them, as I said, are maybe as extreme as the other, and that there's elements within that group that are also just following orders or being pushed in to do something they don't quite understand. And so he sort of finds a kindred spirit on the other side, as it were. And it's about actually whether they both end up trying to get out together. So that for me was sort of the missing layer, which when we found that, I was like, yes, okay, now we've got a movie.
Is it based on anything specific? Is there a real group out there that they're being marginalized this way? I know I'm from America, so I know nothing about any of this.
It was definitely born of kind of, there's the beginning of 2019. So we were kind of, over in the UK, we were dealing with, Brexit, and there was a lot of controversy around, immigration, refugees, and that kind of stuff. And it just felt like the country, and actually this is true, I guess, all over the world, people were sort of becoming increasingly divided. And I felt like there was a lot of misinformation and maybe misunderstandings that were happening because people either had misinformation or weren't necessarily willing to listen to the other side of an argument. So I wasn't necessarily trying to come down on anyone's side with the film, but I just wanted to present underneath the surface of this action movie. I wanted to sort of present that idea that, things might not be what they first appear, and that you might need to try and look and listen and understand as to why certain people might be trying to do certain things, to get a sort of better handle on the situation.
How do you and Martin Delaney know each other?
We worked together in 2011. We shot a film, or 2012, we shot a film called Judas Ghost, which is a horror feature. That was the first time I'd worked with Martin, and we got on great. And I thought he was a fantastic actor, and he's got a real good range too. Like, people can probably find his show real. Like, he's really funny. He does a lot of good comedy stuff, but he's done more serious things. He's done like medieval movies, although actually less so action. Even though I thought, he'd be really good at it. So yeah, we'd been talking on and off ever since then, really. And I actually edited a film he directed called Queen's Mile in 2015 or 16, I think. So we'd always had that connection, but we hadn't actually worked together as director and actor since Judas Ghost. So we were talking about doing that anyway. And then this was sort of the perfect opportunity.
The lead quote unquote villain is Ben Turner. This is a bad dude, and he's in a lot of real fun stuff. Where does he come from? How do you hook up with him?
So Ben Turner, that was actually a suggestion of our producer, Emily Haig. She'd actually worked with him previously, and she recommended him for the role. And I sort of knew of him, but I must admit, I didn't really know his work in great detail. And then I went away and watched 6 Days on Netflix, which is the movie about the Iranian embassy, the SAS Iranian embassy siege. And he plays the lead villain, and he was fantastic. And straight away, I was like, oh my God, this is the guy. And obviously Emily had that connection. So she approached him with the project, and thankfully he was open to doing it, which was awesome. I mean, it was intimidating, frankly, to work with him on set because, I still consider myself fairly new to this. And when it's someone you don't know who's done so much great stuff, you almost think, well, who am I to say to them, oh, maybe do it this way, but we didn't actually get a chance to meet beforehand either because he was so busy. Literally the first day on set is the first time I met him. So obviously that was quite intimidating, but he was lovely, and he was so brilliant in the part. And also he really amplified those kind of gray areas that I was talking about to make the villain a bit more relatable. And he really actually worked on the script. There's a big sort of central dialogue scene where the police officer is being held captive, and Ben's character confronts him and kind of faces him with these things with these ideas that, do you actually believe in what you're doing, or do you even know what you're doing? We're all here because we believe in something. Do you? And a lot of the nuances and a lot of the dialogue in that scene actually came directly from Ben. He really worked closely on that with us, and I think really kind of added another layer to it.
When he's on screen, he commands your attention the entire time. You're hanging on every word he's saying. Like, he is an indomitable presence, and it's definitely one of the best parts of the film here.
Yeah,
a little bit after we meet Ben's character, we get into some fights, man. And tell me about the stunt team. Like, who'd you work with? Have you worked with them before? Where do you come up with the actual 2-on-1 shots themselves?
So that was a guy. So our fight coordinator was a guy called Neil Chapelhow, and he's an amazing stuntman. He's done some big movies like Solo and Rogue One, and Wonder Woman and stuff. So he's he definitely knows his stuff. And we worked together on my previous short, but only very briefly. We had a gag where someone's hands catch fire, and so him and another guy came along to supervise that. And he loves action movies as well, and loves martial arts and all these things. So again, we bonded over that and talked about doing something together. And this was just an opportunity to do that. And I've got features I would like to work on Neil with. So I thought, this is a good chance for us to sort of trial it out. And so he designed that central fight sequence and worked with us on it. And he also doubled Martin as well, because just coincidentally, he had a similar enough look that he could do that. I mean, it was brilliant. It was a great experience. And we rehearsed, we didn't get much of a chance to rehearse the film at all, just because of people's schedules. But the one thing we were conscious of getting right was the fight scene and the action. And so we rehearsed over about 3 weekends, spread over a couple of months, just where we had full days with Neil and the stunt guys. One of the stunt guys, actually, AD, who gets pushed into a pipe in the film, he actually wasn't able to make the rehearsal. So to big him up, he actually picked up that choreography on the day. The other guy, Miguel, had one rehearsal day with us, but Martin picked it up like that as well and was really good at adjusting on the day as well. But basically we knew, because obviously action takes time to shoot. So we intentionally, in our 5-day shoot, we made it so the final day was just that fight sequence, and we just spent the whole day on it. But having rehearsed it was great, because we knew exactly where the angles were, what the moves were. So it was probably one of our smoothest shoot days, because it was obviously the most worked out. But I was so happy with how that turned out, and Neil's expertise was great. Even in the edit as well, little tricks like, just speed ramping a punch in the last few frames and stuff like that, just subtle little tweaks that, you know, I didn't know as an editor that just make that much more difference. It was great.
You mentioned that pipe scene. That thing goes hard, dude. Like, it is painful to watch. And is he padded for that, or did you add extra to the editing? Is there an extra sound bite in it?
I mean, obviously, you know, the sound definitely helps, but no. So what's happened there is we've, for those who've seen the film, it is in the trailer as well. It's actually 2 shots made to look like one. So Martin pushes him, and the camera whip pans out, and then AD puts himself in front of the pole and basically just jumps into it and hits his shoulder, which was padded, but it looks like his head. And then we whip into it, and then we stitch the 2 together, and it just looks like one seamless shove. But yeah, with the sound effect, it's just fantastic. That always gets a great reaction when we show it to people.
Yes, it does. Yeah, outstanding. Horror or action, which is easier?
Oh, they definitely both have their challenges. I would say, because action for me is, I feel like it's more time consuming to shoot the small pieces. So something that is very quick on screen, just in my experience, takes a lot to break down, do it safely, get the right angles. Whereas I think, depending on the horror, because it's more about those slow builds, you know, slowly pushing in on a door or something like that, that's easier to stage on the day. But then where that becomes harder is in the edit, getting the timing of that right, and the music and the sound mix, so that it is as scary as it can be. So it's probably, I feel like it's maybe easier to shoot, just from my experience. Like, action's quite complicated on the day, but I think horror perhaps is a little tougher in the edit to get right.
Which one's the more satisfying?
Do you know what I mean? Okay, I'll say action for me, but I'm biased because I love action. I think horror, they're both very satisfying. They're like, when you execute something you hope is scary and it actually scares people, that's the most satisfying thing ever. But equally, when you shove a guy's head into a pipe and the audience winces, that's just as satisfying too.
You said you guys started the project. You and Martin got together in 2019. How long before everything is complete? The pre-production, the post-edit, even down to here's the graphic for the poster.
So that was, it was sort of an unintentionally slightly drawn out process, because we aimed to shoot summer of 2019. And then we actually lost 2 locations before we ended up using the one we did. So that kept setting us back. And it actually got to the point where the earliest we could shoot by the time we'd locked the location was going to be like mid-December. So coming up to Christmas, you know, it's cold, you're going to be losing the light. And the location we were in, you know, as you saw, it's this big open warehouse. It was freezing in there. The light was gone by about 3 o'clock. So your shooting days are cut in half. And for those reasons, we almost thought, let's push this into the new year. But we worried that if we did that, we would again lose people's schedules with actors and stuff, and it wouldn't happen. And thankfully, obviously, with everything that happened in 2020, I'm glad we didn't, because it meant that we did get it in the can before any of that happened. So we had the film there. It slowed down post because, you know, obviously we weren't necessarily able to get to the grading facility, the sound mix place, to do all of that until much later in 2020. So it took probably until September or October of 2020 before we actually completely finished it. It was picture locked early summer, but then we couldn't do anything else with it for a while. But again, Emily, the producer, did a great job coordinating all that. And, you know, Films 59, our post house, were very accommodating. So yeah, it was probably about, from when we shot, it was just shy of a year, probably, from start to finish.
That's insane. Like, guys, those listening, like, making movies is hard. Okay, the location you guys did end up at, is that all just one facility, or did you have to move around still? Because I love the staircase.
Yeah, so that was all one. We kind of, again, just knowing the time we would have, thought we can't possibly do this in 2. There was you'll see when you watch the film, there's 2 characters that end up on a rooftop at the end, and we did think we might have to have a separate rooftop, but thankfully there was actually an area which wasn't the roof outside the main entrance of the warehouse, which looked like a roof, and we thought, okay, we can stage it here and do it all in one place. The big difference with the warehouse is the other 2 locations we looked at were quite different, in that one was an abandoned hotel that was falling apart, and the other was like an office block. So it was much more claustrophobic, in that it was tight corridors, lots of different rooms and staircases, which is how I'd originally envisaged it. And it's funny because each time we lost those places, I kept thinking, we're never going to find anywhere like that again. And then something would come up. So the warehouse was totally different to what I'd imagined. But what we realized with that is that it was suddenly then the film took on a different life, because now it's about this lone small officer trapped in these big spaces, and there was almost something claustrophobic about the fact that he was this little guy in this huge open space, and something quite ominous about it. So we kind of turned that to our advantage, and there were lots of nice little areas still where he could hide in small rooms, or there's that spiral staircase he runs up. So we definitely made the most use of the space, but it totally changed our approach, certainly visually, to how we were going to do it.
Was there any stunts you couldn't do? Like I really feel like at one point someone was supposed to go over the balcony, and they just were like, yeah, we can't get a pad for that, it's not happening.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'd have definitely, it wasn't a plan to put someone in the balcony, because even going through a window I did think was pushing it, but on the budget we did, there's a final shootout that takes place, as you'll have seen, with the sort of hero and the villain, that was originally slated to go on longer. There was going to be another guy involved in that shootout, and a shotgun that he had and various things. And we had all that lined up on the day. And it was just, as I said, by the time it was light enough in the warehouse to film, it was about 9 a.m, and then it was dark by about 3. And Emily likes to say that, rather than shooting this in 5, we actually shot it in about 2.5 by the time you take into account all the, the daylight hours we actually had. So we got to the point where it was like, we're never going to make the day if we try and get all of that. So I had to make a call about how do we shorten this action sequence. So there was a couple of bits we got cut out. The last guy with the shotgun, bless him, I had to go and tell him, sorry, we're actually not going to use you today because we're going to run out of time. And I knew if we started that, we wouldn't be able to finish it. So that was a tough call, but these are all, things we can do for another movie. And I will say, actually, the central fight scene, that got very close to being exactly how we choreographed it. But the last guy to die originally came to a much more gruesome end that I won't say, because I'm going to keep the idea for another thing. But we did run out of time, so we quickly had to come up with another way to wrap that fight up. So we did. And yeah, I'll just have to bank that idea for a rainy day.
That's fair. That's fair. So based on that, is there a longer format of Officer Down? Is there a feature maybe in the works for this? Could you squeeze out 85, 90 minutes out of this?
I'd definitely like to. I mean, I'd love to work with all that same cast again, and I think the premise has a lot of legs. I don't know if I would directly adapt the same story, but I think taking that central dynamic of two people pitted against each other, one quite not understanding the other and what his background is or where he comes from, and then someone caught in the middle, like that idea, I will probably take and turn into a feature, and then I'll just change probably the backdrop of why it's happening. So yeah, I think there will be a feature in the works, but not a direct adaptation, something that's heavily influenced by, should we say.
Are you working on your next thing?
Yeah, so I've got, I don't know 100% yet what that is. I'm working on 2 or 3 different feature ideas with a couple of different writers. It will definitely be in the same vein, like tonally and stylistically. That's definitely the thing I want to do next as a feature. And this was always designed to sort of make my stamp in that regard, but the specifics in terms of story and stuff like that, I'm not too sure yet. And then of course it will come down to funding and how much money we can raise and all that sort of stuff will dictate it slightly. But yeah, so there's things in the pipeline, but nothing concrete just yet.
What's that thing you're sitting on that's going to make people want to go, oh shit, I can't wait for the next Simon Pearce thing? Oh, did you know Guy Ritchie stole that one shot he did and like anything you sitting on? Maybe the dream project that you could work on?
I mean, I don't know about necessarily a specific dream project, but certainly there's ideas for like set pieces and moments that I have that, there's a good friend of mine, Chris Marshall, that I write with a lot, who did a little bit on Officer Dan as well. And we've got key moments and set pieces that have been bouncing around in scripts we've been writing since like 2008, and, all kind of actiony stuff. And it's never found it into a film yet, but there's about 3 of them, I would say, that are definitely destined at some point to come off. But I don't know yet when that will be, but hopefully soon.
We mentioned the present. We talked a little bit about the future. I completely neglected to ask about your past. How do you get started in all this?
So I have always been into film really from a very young age. Both my parents are in the industry. My mum is a makeup artist and my dad's a camera operator. He was actually the camera operator on this film.
Nice.
I naturally had an interest because they would show me stuff that they'd worked on, and I would want to do that. And it's probably when I was about 10 or 11, just because I was bored, I picked up a family video camera and just made up a film on the spot with a friend of mine, and we shot it and came up with the story. And it was all in camera. There was no editing or anything. And something about that process I just instantly fell in love with, and I was like, oh my god, this is what I want to do. So from that moment on, I kind of knew I wanted to direct. And then, slowly the projects would become more advanced. And then I remember my mum got a laptop that had iMovie on it, and suddenly I could edit. So that was a whole new world to me. And then, I just kept making films. And I remember writing to various companies when I was in school, like wanting to just start work and get work experience. But of course, for insurance reasons, most companies couldn't take me on until I was 18. So I basically went through my A levels and sixth form just for the sake of passing time. And then as soon as I was able to go into work, I just took any job I could that would get me on a set. It didn't matter if I was the T-boy or holding the boom or, running cables, whatever it was. And then I just kept making my own stuff on the side, and just kind of, I guess, it just sort of built from there. But I think fairly early on knew, hey, this is what I want to do. And I've just been doing it ever since.
What's more fun to work on? It's a three-part choice: live television, post-produced television, or film.
Probably film, I think, for me.
Okay.
And I've worked a lot in TV. So when I'm not directing, I'm a freelance editor. That's kind of my day job. So I've worked a lot of documentary shows. I do a lot of stuff for like National Geographic and Animal Planet, that kind of thing. And I do enjoy working on all of those things, but my heart will always be in drama. And there's just something about the process of film that I just love. So that's ultimately the dream, is to sort of work on that stuff full time, for sure.
Simon Pearce is the director. The film is Officer Down. It is currently at the Iron Dragon Action Fest, idtvactionfest.com. The festival ends Saturday, September 4th. I think it lives on the URL still, but just in case it doesn't, check out Genre Blast out of Virginia. That happens today as this drops, September 3rd. And then if you're in the London area, you can check out the new Renaissance. That's happening September 24th through the 26th. And then Crystal Palace, which is a film theater only. That's coming on down the pike. But Officer Down, lots of fun. I recommend everybody see it where you can. Simon, is there anything I'm missing here?
No, although I do just want to give a shout out to our amazing director of photography, Phil Mayhew, who did an incredible job on the film, and certainly made the most of both that location and our limitations that I mentioned earlier when it comes to light. He made the film look amazing. His, past credits, for those who don't know, he's worked on Casino Royale, The Mask of Zorro, Entrapment. He's an incredible director of photography, and I was fortunate to be able to work with him on this. As he knows, my dad Roger, who shot it. I just wanted to shout out to him because he's definitely didn't need to work on something like this, and was very kind to do so. It was an incredible experience, as was also working with Joseph, who played Amir, who I should mention as the third of the sort of three-hander that this film is. So Martin, Ben and Joseph were an amazing team, and I hope everyone gets a chance to see their work.
So more information can be found on Twitter at Officer Down Film, and follow Simon at CBA Productions. That's Charlie Bravo Alpha Productions. As for me, I do some stuff around here. This is the BosNet.family. We just dropped the Kick-Ass Movie Podcast number 4, where we brought in Sweet Science Cinema co-host Jamil Hemphill, talking Undisputed 2, Michael Jai White, Scott Adkins, me and Master Len Kabazinski break it all down. Speaking about Jamil Hemphill, September 29th, we are talking about Denzel Washington in The Hurricane. No Kush and Kai for the month of August, as we figured out. No Kush and Kai for September, but we will come back in October. I promise, guys. Pinky swear. Otherwise, for Simon Pearce, I've been Kush Hayes. You've been you.
Microdose, 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 yeah, microdose.
From the BosNet family.
Because even going through a window, I did think was pushing it. But